Welcome to the Power Panel Podcast Echoes, a segment of our show dedicated to exciting intergenerational conversations with some of Africa's young, dynamic women leaders. I am your host, Ambassador Raychelle Omamo, a senior counsel, diplomat, and former cabinet minister in Kenya. On this inaugural episode of the Power Panel Podcast Echoes, our guest and storyteller is Lorna Omondi Ogolla, Partnership Lead at Google Research Africa. A truly exceptional young Kenyan woman leading and excelling in the rapidly evolving world of tech. Welcome, Lorna.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to sharing the parts of the story you can't often tell on LinkedIn. It's often so sanitized that it looks so proper. And people don't know the struggles behind those titles, achievements, accomplishments. So I look forward to sharing the not so happy side of getting there, in the hopes that it'll encourage people who are currently on the way there.
Now, that's a good place to start, Lorna, because the first thing I want to speak to you about is your brilliance. No one can read through your CV or hear snippets of your story without being absolutely impressed by your academic excellence. And I wondered about that. How does somebody who is naturally bright see and feel the world?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure I think of myself as naturally brilliant. I have a growth mindset, which means that anything that is a target of mine is achievable. I've met people who are naturally bright. There's people who speak like 6 languages, just sleep, wake up, and everything comes easy. I'm not one of them. I'm curious, and I'm determined, and I'm resilient. And that leads to results when you put it all together. One thing I really like to publicize is that genius exists in different forms. There are people who are considered naturally brilliant because they have photogenic memories or they remember everything they hear. There are people who are just geospatially very aware. They won't get lost. They just understand space very well. There are people who understand creativity very well. There are people who are musical. There's different kinds of genius. And I'm really glad that I discovered mine early. Mine isn't a natural brilliance of I just get everything quickly. My skill is pattern recognition. And that works really well in the Kenyan system of education because you're like, okay, what does the teacher want me to know? Aha, how does the teacher think? So it's very easy for me to extrapolate where the questions will go. And it worked for me in school, in high school, in college, at work, because then you'd see and hear your boss and see where they're thinking. And then I learned very young just to be very curious. And the curiosity helped me uncover patterns that then helped me fill in the gaps quickly. And I'm like, oh, I know where you're going. I'll fill that in. But I'm glad I found mine, and my parents were very supportive of my curiosity because it helped me realize that I can ask questions, and the quality of my questions determined how quickly I understood concepts, how quickly I was able to articulate myself and contributed to my success. But not everything came easy. And for the things that did not come easy, I have just been known to be like doggedly resilient, persistent. I will look at something every single way possible. With the internet now, between ChatGPT, Gemini, everything available to me is a tool for growth. And I just focus really intently on growth. I hope later on you ask me some of the things I failed at many times so that I can tell the story of that. So that it's clear that you can achieve all the things I've achieved. You can go to MIT, Stanford, Cambridge, have perfect or greater than perfect GPAs and all of those, not because you're naturally brilliant, because you're persistent. And that's really important for people to know. You don't have to be a genius from birth to do great things.
So what you're saying is that your pathway to success has always been your persistence and your curiosity.
That would be the underlying qualities or that drive me and that define the worker, the learner, the daughter, every position that I've held in my life, socially, emotionally, in education, I just go in with the attitude that if someone has been able to do this well, who am I not to? What did they do that I am not doing? What can I learn from them? What can I adapt that's in alignment with my values so that I can grow into this person that I want to be? So one thing I've consistently done, very intentionally since high school especially, is write down the things I want to achieve, the things I want to accomplish, whether it's in my profession, how much I want to earn, what I want to impact, who I want to work with. I've written all these things down. I journal extensively, and it's so magical to read my journals from the 2000s and the teens and see where I am now, because I've achieved like 95% of what I said I was going to do. It doesn't mean that I know what I will do to get there, but I set the goal there, and then my eyes are more open to the opportunities for growth, the people that can help me get there, the lessons that I need to learn to get there. Yeah.
But to journal consistently, persistently, is a factor of discipline. Now, you come from a military background, yeah? You were brought up in a military environment. Do you think those values, the value of discipline, the value of being dogged, comes from that environment?
Maybe that was just what I perceived to be normal, given where I grew up. My parents are both very don't give up type of people. Get it done. Just get it done. Legally, properly, ethically, but get it done. Don't give up. They're very encouraging. I think discipline is more observed than taught or encouraged. I see a lot of parents telling their children, read, write, vision, articulate, but are you doing it yourself? It's so much easier to learn when you learn by observation. So the things you observe around you in the environment, with the people that bring you up, if they're doing those things, it's just so much easier for you to pick it up. The discipline came from, yes, definitely watching my parents, growing up around organized forces in barracks, in just being surrounded by excellence and discipline. When that's the norm you grow up around, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like something weird, strange, or different. That's just how you're nurtured. So you pick it up very, very easily. But the tricky thing I see in many households is parents trying to instill discipline. You don't instill discipline, you model discipline.
You describe yourself as a nomad during your early years. You were a typical child in a military environment, moving from place to place as your parents were being transferred from here to there. Do you think the discipline that you observed in your home and applied in your life was a stabilizing factor?
Not really. What was the stabilizing factor was warmth and love. It's very destabilizing to move as much as I did, but we had a very warm and loving household. That was a stabilizing factor. Discipline was a byproduct of just my parents trying to live an organized life. The stabilizing factor was warmth, love, our trust and reliance on God, because not all of it was easy. It's not a very luxurious life. It's not very comfortable. And that was most of my bringing in all my early years until I left the country. It did teach me something else, though, that has helped shape my success. It taught me adaptability. People talk about intelligence quotient, emotional intelligence, and the emotional quotient. And I have learned that even more valuable than those two things is an adaptability quotient. The ability to walk into a new situation and just jump right into things, make new friends, create new relationships, not get depressed or anxious because you have to start life over all over again. that was actually quite powerful because the tech world is rapidly evolving. Things are changing every single moment. If your whole ethos was based on stability, you would not be very effective. So I'm glad that everything in my life prepared me for the person that I am today. It's very easy to walk into a room and leave with 10 friends now because that was my entire childhood. Shifting neighborhoods, just changing localities, and even my life after I moved to the States and then to Europe and then back to the States. I was constantly being forced to adapt. And it's important to be aware of your intelligence. It's important to be emotionally aware and intelligent, but it's so very important to be adaptable and respond to change with grace, faith, love, excitement, positivity, optimism. And that's what those early years did for me.
Lorna, I'd like to explore your childhood years just a little further.
Mm-hmm.
In the spirit of intergenerational dialogue, I want you to listen to an audio clip from our Journey series featuring Dr. Wanjiro Rutenberg.
If you wanted to take me, the younger me, and even me today, if you want to pathologize me, there's many ways you can find pathologies. She's impulsive, she doesn't filter, she's opinionated, she talks too much, she cares too much about what people think. But those are also my superpowers.
The obvious question to you is this: are there innate traits, idiosyncrasies that you possess that people pathologize, but which are your superpowers and the foundation of your leadership skills?
I chuckled so hard when I listened to Wanjiru's interview because I did. And I was like, this lady is my twin. We would have been sisters in another world. Everything that was said about you has been said about me. It is actually quite hilarious how similar African women leaders are. We're told we're not respectful in some worlds because we just say what needs to be said, and people wonder why you're so confident. Thankfully, I have reframed most of those titles to adjectives that I like and I align with. So people tell me that I am very enthusiastic and energetic. I have the energy of 7 puppies, and I carry that energy with me into every room. I've been called bold, gutsy, courageous, because I literally just jump into any difficult task head on. When interesting challenges come up at work and everyone's looking around from side to side, Lorna is the one who put up her hand. I will not know how it's going to be done, but I'll jump into it and be like, let's do this, folks, and I'll rally people to solve the issue. I have been called consistent, reliable. I'm a woman of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, come rain, come shine, unless I'm sick or dying, I will show up very decisively, very supportively. I'm very visionary. I have wild dreams. I keep saying the wildest things. I will do X. And everyone looks at me like, what? And how will you do that? Do you know so and so? How will you? And I'm like, that doesn't bother me. We start with a big vision and then the rest will arrange itself. But if I was to narrow everything down into like 5 things, it would be my vision and ambition. It's wild. It is otherworldly and I own it. I'm very energetic and enthusiastic and optimistic about life. I love being encouraging. I love being thoughtful. I like bringing my full authentic self, however unprofessional it may seem in some contexts. And people have come to appreciate it. And the people that have rolled up to me in leadership, now my reports and the people that report to my reports, just feel comfortable to bring parts of themselves that they would not have thought would be accepted into the office, and still be effective. During COVID, I needed to run global meetings for some really expensive infrastructure, billions of dollars worth. And I was a mom. And there are days when I would have my child on my lap. He's asking for hugs. And I'm like, well, the show must go on. Let us keep doing our work. But showing up as my whole self consistently in every environment I find myself in, is something that a lot of people remark about. And they're like, oh, you can do that? You mean you can show up like this at work? And it works? I'm like, yes. Just remember to be effective, competent, and do your work well. You'll get away with your authenticity. So, yeah, those are things that have been said about me. But Wanjiru feels like a sister from another mother who I need to meet soon, because our paths and qualities are very remarkably similar.
So, like her, were you a leader early in life?
I have never not led. There's never been a situation where I have not been a leader. I was a prefect for as long as I can remember. I was deputy head of school in Kenya High in my year. I was head of my class in Cambridge. I had the Civil Engineers Department Student Association in MIT. The honor societies there, I led 2 of them. And there's some where I've needed a position, and then there's some where I just don't need a position. And my whole ethos or value system is, if something needs to be done, don't just sit around and wait for someone to do it. You can be that person. You don't need a title for it. Just jump in and do the thing that needs to be done. And
Why
sometimes
do you want to take charge?
Mhm.
Why are you a person who wants to take charge, who wants to fix things?
Because if no one is doing it, who else will? If I don't fix it, if we all look at each other, who'll do it? So I'm 2 things. I'm a very good supporter if I find a strong leader who needs rallying people around, because I've noted that I'm very good at rallying people around a cause. So if there's someone there who is doing a good job, I won't fight it. I'll just jump right in behind them and be like, yes, you're trying to be effective. You need some help. I'll jump in right behind. But if I enter a place where I see a clear gap, something that was drilled into me way early in life, as soon as I could speak, is always leave a place better than you found it. And sometimes that just involves rallying people to do a thing because you can't do it by yourself. But sometimes it starts with you just coming up with an innovative idea because you see a gap. So my poor bosses, all through my career, are consistently bugged with new ideas. We can do this like this. We can automate this. We can systematize this. And initially they're like, but why, Lorna? And then they realized there's a thing I did where people were doing something manually. I'd been hired as a program manager. I was not supposed to be doing any systems work, but I saw people were doing things on Excel sheets that were taking tens of hours, and we needed to do that 1,000 times in the year I'd been hired. And I said, no. I went to my boss and I told them, hey, I've not been hired to do this, but I can write code for you that parallelizes this calculation. It takes away the humans from the equation. You just load in the data and there we go. Here we are. Here we have a solution. And everyone looked at me like I was mad. And then a few seconds, I literally took 2 Friday afternoons at that job and I created the solution, and everyone looked at me like I had horns on my head. They're like, what? You can do this? Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. And the product of that was multiple leaders in that department all asked for someone like me with skills like mine to do analytics like that because they didn't know it was possible. And coming out of that, I had 4 managerial roles offered to me in my early 20s, managing people who were way older than me just because I came up with an idea and was like, let's jump in, let's do this. And they gave me the power. So just taking initiative to leave things better than you find them, if no one else is doing them, has been one of my core ways of creating a path for me. It wasn't given to me. I didn't apply for any of my leadership roles transparently. I literally just saw a gap, gave an idea, and people ran. I gave the idea, I implemented the pilot, and people saw that it worked and created teams around it. The flip side about this that I can't share on my LinkedIn is for every idea that I gave that was accepted, there were probably 99 that I gave that were rejected. People were like, oh, that's mad. That's just insane. We're not doing that. And people often give up. They say one thing at work, and because the manager doesn't like it, they're like, oh man, they don't like me. I will not be contributing anymore. And then they stop. I don't stop. I just keep giving them. There's a very low acceptance rate, less than 5%. But that 5% has literally charted my career for me and opened every opportunity I've had in the last 7 years.
During her interview with us, Dr. Wanjira Rutenberg also alluded to some of the perils of having a leadership style that is visible, where you lead from the front and you're proactive. She posits that if you're a visible leader, you often attract slings and attacks, or that leadership can be emotionally draining and even painful. As a visible leader yourself, has this been your experience?
You get all these great opportunities, and it comes at a heavy cost sometimes. I have burnt out twice where I've just needed to take the whole month off. Don't talk to me. Don't email me. I will not respond to anything because my brain was tired. It has needed a lot of awareness of my mental health and cognizance of when I have needed to take a break, to take a pivot, to pause. That part isn't taught because that part doesn't appear on your resume. It doesn't appear anywhere. But the cost of all the visibility is very real fatigue, very real emotional, physical exhaustion. And initially, I just used to try and power through that. And about 12, 13, 14, 15 years into my career, I just learned to be like, you know what? I love leading. I love impact, but I also love breaks. And I'm very grateful that in the employment options that I've had in my last 7 years, the opportunity to take that mental health break has been afforded to me so that I can come back sharper and eager and more willing to jump into the hard tasks. So it's a price you pay. You jump into difficult things, but then you also have to be very, very aware of, are you facing anxiety now? Are you facing sleep deprivation? Are you exercising enough? How's your body doing? How's your mind doing? It takes a toll on your body and sometimes your relationships and your friendships. So about 2, 3, 4 years ago, I made very distinct intentional decisions to formally create time for my friends, create time for friend retreats, travel somewhere random and discreet, hidden, maybe in Asia, maybe in South America, maybe in some part of Africa. Just spend time connecting, encouraging ourselves, because all my girlfriends have also taken very similar paths. They're leaders in their industries, respectively, across Africa. And it's just been very refreshing to intentionally create time for respite, time for meditation, time for union with nature, because you have to take care of all parts of yourself as you grow, especially as rapidly and as quickly as I did.
That is really good, solid advice, Lorna. As we lead, we really must take care of ourselves and find equilibrium and balance in our lives. That's a powerful lesson for every young leader. As we take this short power break, we ask that you subscribe to the Power Panel podcast. Let's work together to expand the Power Panel community. Visit our website, birdsongafrica.com, and follow us on social media to plug into the Power Panel network. Email your thoughts to hello@birdsongafrica.com. This is the Power Panel podcast, Echoes. I want to go back a little bit and explore the subject of transformation and opportunity. You were an A student at Hospital Hill Primary School. You then went to Kenya High School and was an A student there too. And then you went to JQAT, Jomo Kenyatta University for Agriculture and Technology, for a short while. And then suddenly you were at MIT. Tell me what happened in between JQAT and MIT.
This is where I tell you it's important. I tell our listeners here, it's so very important to have an inner guidance system. I have a very big, strong relationship with God, and I seek his guidance, encouragement, approval, direction often. And I was a strange character. You know how there are people who always knew they're going to be lawyers or engineers or pilots or doctors? I'm not any of those things. I've never wanted to be any particular career. I've always known I wanted to influence change, have impact, solve complex problems. But that could be in many things. It could be in law school. It could be in engineering school. So fun fact, I actually got into University of Nairobi Law. I just never went. I also got into JQuat Engineering School, and in my 9th week there, just got a really strong sense in my spirit that I was in the wrong place. And I'm thankful to Yahweh for that, because I listened. And I'm so very grateful that my parents were supportive, because I went home one weekend and I was like, thank you very much, parents, for paying for me to come here. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't know what I'm doing next, but this is not it. And I dropped out, and I had a very eventful 2007. I then changed my job form to read University of Nairobi, and that's how I got into University of Nairobi Law. I had started as a computer scientist engineer at their Juja campus, and then I had close to 9 months to reflect and figure out what comes next. And in that period, my dad is still a junior military officer at this point. Me going to America or UK for further studies was impossible, barring a scholarship. And in this period, my mom came across an article it was an interview of Susan Boyer, and she was talking about Zawadi Africa. I didn't know her personally then. And we emailed her. Me and my mom is my ultimate wing woman. She prays for me, she supports me, she encourages, she just jumps into all my adventures with me. And I'm so grateful for her love and support. So she finds Susan's email. I'm not even sure how. I think we went to their website. Both of us don't know her personally. And we just write her an email. And I write her my ambition, my vision. I'm very big on tech impact, transforming Africa, becoming a leader, whether in corporate sector or wherever. And I would really love the opportunity to go to MIT or Columbia. I was like, if I'm going to go to a place out of the country, I'll go big or go home. I'll choose the best places or not at all. And you kind of shoot your shot and you don't expect to hear anything. But this is one of my life lessons I hope anyone listening to this leaves with. I believe in shooting all the shots. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I take all of them, and some will land. And my whole story transformed because Susan accepted my email. She responded. In fact, she lived in America then, but she was coming back for Christmas holidays in 2007. She scheduled time with me in Java Junction. I still remember it like it was yesterday. And I just talked to her about my dream, vision, ambition for the period of the coffee date. And she personally helped me with my application, adopted me into her Zawadi Africa family. And many thanks to Susan, my life would have been very different without her and if I hadn't taken that shot. She walked with me through my whole MIT journey, and I have mentored for her and for our organization tens of girls since. And that was the event that changed my life in 2007. It gave me my first scholarship, and that's how I got into MIT. So the funding came from MIT, but I wouldn't have known anything about the entire financial aid process applications without Saudi Africa. And it also gave me a group of phenomenal young ladies who are all interested in being the change wherever they are in whatever sector. And those are the people who've grown with me. This leads to another lesson. The people you surround yourselves with will determine how resilient you are, how ambitious you are, how visionary you are. And that family, my Zawadi family, is just a group of the most intentional, most thoughtful leaders across Africa. And they have shaped my journey because in every subsequent attempt of mine career-wise, whenever I felt like giving up, they have jumped in to encourage me and told me, no, Lorna, we're not giving up. We're all moving in this direction. When I needed to get into graduate school, they encouraged me. When I needed to do apply for promotions or advocate for myself at work, they were right there with me. And that really shaped my journey. And then the second piece of my journey was after I finished MIT, I really wanted to move to California. And that was just a family story, but I couldn't. So I really wanted to get into Stanford because I wanted to join my person in California. And that journey involved 3 years of applications, applying, getting rejected, applying, getting rejected. Sometimes people think, oh, this school didn't want me, Harvard didn't want me. And I'm like, yeah, Stanford didn't want me the first or second time. They took me the third time. Sometimes we give up right before the acceptance. And I really want to encourage people to not give up as after the first failure or as soon as you've seen your first rejection. There's a lot of good stuff on the other side of hanging in there. The third time I applied to Stanford, I threw in Cambridge into the ring. It had been a dream school. I didn't know how I was ever going to make it there. But the third time I made that application, I applied to both Stanford and Cambridge. And I applied to be a Gates Scholar in Cambridge and I got it. So I was like, oh, well, would you look at that? Thank you, God. So I accepted all opportunities, Gates Scholar at Cambridge, Stanford Scholar. I asked Stanford to wait for me. But I would have missed all that if I hadn't been resilient, if I'd just accepted the fate that life gave me the first time. And the second other resilient story that I have to share is because I really wanted to work in tech. I wanted to work for the biggest name in tech. I wanted to work in Google after Stanford. And friends, it took me 23 tries across 6 years, multiple roles, multiple teams, multiple application interviews, rejections. And I just didn't stop at it. I kept going until I got the dream role and I ran with it once I did.
So this has been a consequence of things that have been fortuitous and your own resilience. Would I be right in saying that?
That is very precise. You show up with the best energy, the biggest enthusiasm, pour in your best effort. And if it doesn't work the first time, try again. Keep doing it. The world is changed by the people who are persistent enough to believe that their dream is viable, it's feasible and achievable.
Moving into your career now, in the world of tech, is going to the best schools a factor of legitimacy?
I like it. It gives me some street credentials, but I envisioned myself going to all those big schools for 2 reasons. I knew I wanted to influence technology, influence quality of life globally. And I observed that it helped to have those credentials. One of my favorite Kenyan leaders, the late Honorable John Mishuki, was a Cambridge student, and I crossed paths with him inadvertently once. And I just admired his effectiveness. And I liked that the name of the school didn't hurt. But then there's also African leaders like Tom Mboya that may not have had a fancy college education, but was still extraordinarily effective. The people I've looked up to have been a mix of both things. But as a woman where we often face multiple biases against us, I wanted to be undeniable. I wanted to walk into a room and have people respect me and know that I know what I mean. It hasn't always been useful because every room I have walked in, I've had to gain my street credibility all over again, especially as a Black woman in a very not diverse space. So I did it because I knew I wanted to have all the credibility, but it's not essential. In fact, in all my hiring, because I've hired massive tech teams across the world, I personally don't look at the schools. I ask the same set of questions. Once I filter the resumes, I never look at the schools people went to. I just ask whether you can do the job. And I figured it's because I need people like me to enter the system and debias it so that even if you went to a school that no one knows about, you still have an opportunity. And I've hired some of my best teammates and colleagues from places that I honestly never knew about.
So that brings me to the issue that you've raised about being Black, young, and African in the tech world. A lot of the women that I have been interviewing over the past year have alluded to how difficult it is to be those three things, to be Black, young, and African. How do you manage that dynamic in the tech world? Give me an example.
How I've managed it, I am very sure I managed it because of the prayers of my grandmothers and my mother. That was bullet number one. I am very supported by my system, my community. The second one has been jumping into situations where I deliver with undeniable competence. I remember this one there's been multiple situations where I enter the room, I'm the only one under the age of 50 who is a person of color, and I need to convince them that the thing I'm recommending is the thing to do. My core skill and science is operations research, and that's the science of making the most optimal decision, the least regrettable decision, often for infrastructure projects that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars to billions of dollars range. And I'm talking to people that are just looking at me like, where did you come from and why should we listen to you? And there's a couple of things that have worked in my favor. Outside of divine favor and grace, I make it a point to get allies and supporters in my ecosystem early. Who do people respect in the organization? How do I get on their good side? Intelligence is important, but that thing I mentioned earlier about adaptability, understanding where the power is and how to be useful, beneficial to the organization and the leaders of the organization, to the point that they are comfortable speaking for you and on behalf of you in rooms that you cannot enter, has been really helpful. So I would often just be friendly. Be friendly with the vice presidents, the directors, the executives in the room, get to know them personally, care for them as an individual, and then accompany that with excellent work. Whatever task you're given, do it to such excellence that they just know, if I need X, call Lorna. And then the second piece is just courageously knowing your stuff so well and then speaking about it with great clarity and competence. There's a time I walked into a room, it was a new job, it was a multi-million-dollar contract, it was a math contract. So the way I was talking about making decisions based on math for investment, we had hired a group to do some work for us, and I looked at the work and it was mathematically nonsensical. It didn't make sense. But because they were dealing with people in my company that didn't know the math, they had gotten away with it for a couple of months. So Lorna is here, a new person on the job, new to the company, new to the team. I look at the documents and I realize, this is not going to work out well for anyone. In fact, it doesn't make sense. And I have to tell people that we're paying a couple $1 million to do work for us that their work is all wrong. Everyone in that room is a doctor, executive, computer science, with a lot more experience than I do. But I know that I'm onto something. So I check my math. I check my math again. I check it again. I go online. I do more research. And when I'm sure I have the facts of the case, I call a meeting and I explain to them that they're wrong. And they honestly could not believe it. So I bring a digital board where I can write the math out for them. And slowly but surely, they start to realize that they had made an error and now they owed our company a lot of services for the mistake they had made. And there you have two options. You can rub it in their faces and be like, whoa, I know. But half the job is being intelligent, and then the other part of the job is being emotionally intelligent so that you don't make an enemy out of them. You don't cause shame. You don't cause embarrassment. You're just being factual, but then you lead them back to a solution. So it's about both the intelligence to guide people back on the right path, and then the emotional awareness to not create enemies or shame or guilt, because you still need to work with these people, bring them back into the fold, create a solution that in which no one loses faith, and that gives you a lot of credibility now in your company. So I got a lot of respect after that within my own company, even though I was like fresh, new, the youngest person on the team. They're like, Lorna is thoughtful, she's considerate, and she knows how to come out of sticky conversations and negotiations with partners outside of our entity. That's really valuable. So just combining clear competence, courage, gaining allies that can speak for you, and then holding the faith and being resilient is a big part of that journey. Transparently, it includes a lot of tears. I've cried a lot of tears, but then I go to the bathroom, I wipe those tears, and I'm like, well, we still need to do the job. Come back, get back to it.
Gosh, that sounds really distressing. What were you crying about, Lorna? Was it about the misogyny, the racism? Were you crying about disrespectfulness? What were you crying about?
All of it. It's heavy. It's almost like you're carrying your entire race on your shoulders. When I went into this team I was talking about, for example, it was a global team. I was the only woman of color. Actually, I was the only person of color, male or female, in the entire global team. And they're moving around billions of dollars, and I'm the youngest also in my particular group. So you're crying because you're not sure how to be understood. You're not sure if some things you're facing or some questions you'd be asked. You know how people can be in disbelief, like, how dare you point out a mistake in my work? They're like, who are you? So you're crying about all of it because you're like, I know I'm right, but I just need to bring you to that place where you also recognize that I'm right, but in a way where you don't feel too embarrassed. So it's just the weight of it, because I would feel like I'm representing all Black people, and if I don't do a good job, this team will never hire any other person of color. And thankfully, after me, within 2-3 short years, there's like 6 more people of color within the team. I was so grateful for that. But in that moment where you're all alone in that room, it feels like you're literally carrying the hopes, dreams, expectations of all your ancestors and living relatives and anyone that looks like you. And you're their representative, you're their ambassador, and you cannot let them down.
You are so right, Lorna. That sounds very, very heavy. Very onerous for a young person. And good on you for carrying that burden and executing your work with such panache and skill. Well done.
Why, thank you.
Now, you've spent most of your career working in the United States of America, I assume.
That is accurate.
And you work at Google. When I visited a Google office, I was very excited about being there. The first person I met was wearing a long, wonderful cape, and I said, well, this is where I would have liked to have worked in my younger years. Workspaces are often influenced by cultural context. I want you to listen to Dr. Wanjura Rutenberg again. She compares the African context with the American one.
So trust building is the first thing you have to do when working on the continent. The Americans are a lot more transactional. So your call length will be 15 minutes and people have conducted business and they are done.
Trust building and relationship building seem to be a prominent leadership skill in the African cultural context. Do you agree with her?
That is very true. In America, I did tons of deals without ever meeting the person. Over those 15-minute calls, Dr. Wanjuru describes, never knowing anything about the person. And I've learned very quickly that friendships, relationships, in-person meetings, personal warmth and understanding, trust building are very essential to how we do business in Africa. And I'm okay with that. Now, in the tech space, it's slightly different from other African corporate sectors. So it'll still be slightly different. There'll be aspects of American culture that have permeated into the tech space, but it's still very warm. Trust you trust someone first, and then you do business with them. And that's allowable. It's part of our culture, and you just own it, adapt to it, and figure out how to be effective in both situations because we're aiming for global leadership and impact. So again, it helps to be able to bring my African self into the room when I'm dealing with partners from the continent and switch into a personality that is more adaptable and adept to dealing with the American and European counterparts. But the key goal is just to remain effective in a way that is in alignment with your values and how you want to be perceived and how you want to show up.
In my experience, in the African context, you really need to lead empathetically to get people to follow you and to deliver results. A leader needs to be a little bit more personable, more affable, because the workspace is so emotional. Have you tackled these dynamics?
Thankfully, I haven't had to learn that because it was always with me. It was a piece of adapting to, I think I've lived in 23 places in my short life. And being empathetic, thoughtful, understanding of where the other person is coming from has always been core to how I do business. What's been different for me, however, that will take this conversation in a slightly different direction is what has hit me as something that I really look forward to helping shape, inspire, and change is the scale at which people think of solutions to their problems. The way startup founders, tech companies operate in Silicon Valley is we're building for the world. We're taking over the world. We'll start here, but we'll take over the world. And it's very global in thinking. What I've observed here that's different, that we need to work as African leaders, African women leaders to change is because we're so unique. We have like 54 different countries, over 3,000 languages, multiple different regulatory and policy structures. Often I meet brilliant people who've come up with brilliant tech solutions, and then they're just solving for Rwanda, or they're just solving for Kenya, or they're just solving for Ghana, or they're just solving for one place. Thinking for scale and then creating institutional advantages that allow our tech sector to flourish beyond a single border is the thing that's actually hit me the most. It's not the building the relationships. We're good at that and we adapt quickly. It's the how do we create that mindset and then the framework and then the business development capabilities so that the tech we create in one place is easily scalable, extendable, accessible in multiple African countries. That actually has been the thing that's been hardest to watch, get a sense of, and then try to think around how to still be effective cross-border with all the restrictions and blockers that exist around doing business across multiple countries.
Do you think that's your calling? Do you think that's the contribution that you can make for women in tech in Africa?
I'll tell you one of my wild dreams. Did I tell you I like announcing my wild dreams and just saying them and then hoping that because I've said it loudly, everything will align with this? One of my to-do list items by the time I'm 50 is create 1 million high quality, high-paying tech jobs across sub-Saharan Africa, or all of Africa, I don't mind. 1 billion tech jobs. And the reason I chose this number is when I joined Google, Google was already a household name with international influence, and we were only 100,000 across the world. So I was like, if Google could have done that with 100,000 people, I wonder what 1 million high-quality, high-paying tech jobs would do across the continent. And it's getting so much easier to develop solutions with artificial intelligence, with all the capabilities we have now. We're going to be so many Africans in the next 25 years. There's some projections that take us to 2.5 billion Africans. What will all those people do? I want, one of my wild dreams is to just be a radical creator of employment. Meaningful, gainful, world-changing, transformative employment. So I'm just promising myself now, and then let's see which friends I make that come out of this podcast that help me make this possible. But yes, I feel like that is one of the things I've been put on earth to do, make a difference, employment-wise, change economies by the good things we can do, create, build for other continents from this continent. And I look forward to seeing what part I play in enabling or facilitating that.
As a follow-up question, do you participate in the task of building a pipeline for young African women in tech? If so, how are you doing that?
It's mostly been reactive, and because people know where I am and how to get me now, I get invitations, and as often as I am in the country and I'm able to speak to that particular engagement, I will show up, I will encourage, I will mentor. And it's not just in the tech space. I have many skills. Tech is just one of them. So even just for women leadership programs, mentorship, capacity building, encouragement, motivation, I show up for those as well, just because I want to see many more people like me jumping into positions of influence. It'll make my work of creating 1 million tech jobs easier.
Reflecting back on your career so far, what kind of a reputation do you think you've established?
One of excellence, one of competence, one of reliability, one of enthusiasm and unbridled optimism, one of resilience, and one of bias to action. Bias to action is really important to me. Like the gap between when you say you're going to do something and when you actually do it needs to be very, very slim in whatever you choose to execute. And I am very intentional about having bias to action in everything I purpose to do.
So you never procrastinate?
I procrastinate, but not on the things that matter. I have a principle of prioritization called Eat the Frog First. It's from a book that someone read, one of my managers read and gave it to me early in my career. And it's basically do the most unpleasant, difficult thing first. Do that one first and then go from there. The other thing I do is for the things that really matter, I put deadlines for myself, and then I tell people that I respect and value that I'm going to do X by this time. And because I don't like letting people down, I like to be a person of my word. That's why I like to share my dreams, visions, goals, ambitions, targets loudly, because it helps me with accountability. I may procrastinate, but I will still finish by the time it's due. I never handed in an assignment late, not in college, not in graduate school. I don't do that. I like to keep my promises on time. So me saying my promises loudly, even if I procrastinate, I will still have at least a version 0 to get out of the door by that first date time I promised. There's something that is a principle of the Google teams I worked at that was so valuable. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It is such a powerful principle because sometimes we procrastinate because we think the thing we have is not great enough to share yet. And my bosses are like, no, just do the thing. Show me something. Show me something. I'll run with it. And then it's easier to improve an imperfect thing than to wait until it's truly perfect to share something. So I'm very keen and big on sharing V0s left, right, and center. Some are ignored, some are rejected, but a good number are accepted and become a thing.
Okay. What are you afraid of?
Pride. I hate seeing stories where people start so well and then at the end of life, no one wants anything to do with them. And it's my prayer that I always have an intellectual humility, an intellectual curiosity, a growth mindset, and a respect for people, a respect for users of whatever I'm creating, a respect for the opportunities that life has accorded me. I never want my mindset to shift, that I lose that respect. That part. That's like the biggest thing I'm afraid of. Yeah.
Okay. And so who do you use as a sounding board? Because often we can't tell when we're falling into pride.
I have a sounding board that I was born with. My immediate family, we're just very honest and transparent with each other, and we're very close.
All right. What is your power mantra? Having served in tech for a while now and having moved quickly up the ladder, having shown yourself as a leader with a reputation for excellence, what is your power mantra? What would you say about power and leadership to a young girl who's interested in tech?
My biggest mantra is dream the wildest dreams, then get up and do. Cry if you must, fall if you must, walk if you must, crawl if you must, but keep moving. Keep moving.
Wow, that's powerful. That's very powerful.
Thank you so much. I look forward to bringing you on for my journey. Now I have to give you updates because I made the promise loudly with you.
Yes. We thank Lorna Omondi Ogolla for sharing her story and her dreams with us. Her leadership path reveals the power that lies in adaptability, persistence, excellence, and faith. She is exuberant and refreshingly optimistic. We express our pride in her and wish her all the best now and in the future. We also thank you most sincerely for listening and look forward to your company during our next episode. This is the Power Panel Podcast, Echoes.